Good day, everyone. Welcome back to the Gut Shot podcast. I'm Shamsul, Sam, your host. And here we have today to talk about the topic of the day. We're going to go to my friend, Fui K Soong, who's the CEO of the Center for Strategic Engagement. Yes,
Yep.
sense exactly. And to figure out, I think, or update and figure out the current situation in China and how it impacts the region, what's going on domestically there, how it impacts the region, how it impacts vis-a-vis the dynamics of the geopolitics and economics within its supply chain throughout the world, including the US and Russia, especially with what's going on, and make sense of it. So, Fui, let's start with this. For my data set, looking at the numbers that I see, number one, our Malaysian export to China works out to approximately 40 billion US dollar. That's almost 10% of our GDP.
Correct.
On the other hand, their export to Malaysia is about 100 billion, I believe. Yeah. Which means that, obviously they have a surplus on us, but from a standpoint of supply chain, that becomes a very dependent relationship.
Yep.
Yeah, we all know that 30% of the world manufacturing is dependent on China. In excess of 90% of rare mineral production is China throughout the world from their various mining and production facilities. So, just setting the stage with respect of how China is so integrated within the world economy.
Yep.
What then comes to mind at this current moment? We've just passed the political fourth plenum of the CCP, which was highly anticipated.
Yeah.
So we may want to talk about that slightly.
Mm-hmm.
The concern seems to be that there seems to be a deflationary impact on the Chinese economy. Let's do that as a starting question.
Sure.
So Fui, where do we go from? What do you see? What's your analysis at this point on what we are looking at?
Okay, I think you're talking about two different things here. I mean, in reference to the export numbers, for sure. I mean, we are coming into a surplus, a trade surplus, or rather a trade deficit with China.
Yeah.
That is mounting.
Yeah.
Okay, simply because we do not have the kind of capacity, and I think most countries can't, right, compete with China on capacity, manufacturing capacity, and that is a concern. That is definitely a concern because that in fact, if you compare to the numbers that we've always enjoyed with America and also the FDI numbers, you will see that things are actually reversing.
Yeah.
Right. So it does spell trouble for countries like ourselves. Okay, if that is not addressed. Now coming back to, so there's two different things here, right?
Yeah.
So this, because
I've
we are looking So for Malaysia, definitely there has to be a rethink on how we're going to approach China. And I think it's also an indication. I just came back from Indonesia.
Right.
Indonesia also has the same problem, right? When you go down to certain areas, especially in the Chinese areas and Glodok, and here even if we go to Sri Petaling or whatever, you see all these hot pots, restaurants, outfits, they're all dominated by Chinese.
Right.
Right? And really seemingly taking over the local SMEs.
Right.
Right? So which is why Indonesia was so concerned about having TikTok and all that kind of thing on they've taken away the TikTok shop, right? Simply there was just so much goods coming in from China that's overtaking the local manufacturers. So that is not it is an issue that is not unique to Malaysia, but we have a little bit more buffer. Singapore and Malaysia has a little bit more buffer, simply because we were ahead of the curve compared to, say, countries like Cambodia or Laos, for example, right? But then again, it is. Do I have a solution for that? No, I don't. But to then come back to your question on China's inflation.
Not inflation. I was saying
deflation. Sorry, deflation. I mean the inflation rate or deflation rate, if you like. I don't. I mean, what does deflation mean? Where is the source of deflation in China? Okay, you got to look at the source first. Now, compared to Japan, I think a lot of people are using the same model. Japan went to a deflationary situation after they signed the Plaza Accords, if you remember that. Plaza Accords with America, where America then suppressed the Japanese, in many ways, suppressed the Japanese manufacturing sector. Okay? So if you remember, there were guys smashing Toyotas and all that kind of thing in Washington. I don't know if you remember that, but I do remember those days.
I do remember the bailout of Chrysler and GM.
All that kind of thing. Yes.
I don't know whether they
So the situation, the source of the de-inflationary pressure from Japan was largely to limit the manufacturing capacity of Japan, and also to manipulate the bond market in order to prop up the US dollar, okay, or stabilize the US dollar. And the Japanese bonds has always been used for that. That is why you have Japan is the largest borrower of largest creditor buyer of US bonds after
China.
No, China is still second.
Okay.
China is about 700 billion. I think Japan is about I think it's still 1.3, 1.4 trillion. Anyway, so I think the situation is very, very different. And if you ask a ordinary Chinese person, there is deflation. What does deflation mean? Deflation means that for the same buck, I'm actually getting more. Now, how is that bad for me as a consumer? China also has the lowest electric household electric rates in the world, highest being UK. And if you remember, Samsul, I think taking deflation or inflation as a benchmark is I think for an economy as complex as China, I think it is probably one of, I feel, the biggest blind side that a lot of Western analysts take on when they say, oh yeah, okay, China is imploding because it's deflationary and it's like Japan. If you remember, our Malaysia, when we were going through our fastest growth in the 90s, our inflation was near zero. And we had people had so much money in their pockets. People were buying. Why? Because productivity was rising. So the same thing with China. What they are actually looking at is how to keep prices stable, relatively cheap for their people, while you improve productivity by robotization and so on and so forth. So all these things about housing crisis, China somehow running out of people. I don't know how you run out of people, but in China. I think you're looking at a modeling that doesn't apply into it in that situation. And I'm not saying that China is not without its problems. It does, politically and economically. There is a high unemployment rate amongst the youth, especially the educated ones. Yes, there is an overcapacity, which is why you see the tax revenue. There's definitely a margin squeeze. Okay, and Trump's tariffs are not without its impact. Whether it's the desired impact to actually cow China into doing what they wanted, what they did to Japan, I think that would not be possible, because because China already saw what happened to Japan, and they say, okay, this you're not doing that to me. So which is why they've used the RE Trump card. But of course, then the other question is, how long will it take before
The rest will catch up.
American catch up? The Americans catch up. So I'll leave it as that, and then we'll go on to other
Yeah,
questions.
okay.
So that's how I think it's very erroneous to see deflationary pressure and what's happening in China as equivalent to what took place in Japan. I think they're two totally different circumstances.
I think this is as we've always said on Gut Shot, we are having conversations, right?
Yeah.
And our conversations can have different point of views and different analysis, and that's partly how I wanted to carve out Gut Shot different than any other podcast out there, which is we analyze together. And here's where I think we may differ. When I come about on deflationary, I'm not just looking from the point of view of inflation, right? I'm looking at a deflationary impact on the economy as a whole. As you mentioned, number one, youth unemployment, and they have a big youth population, is a huge concern. They are in excess of 24%. You've got an aging population going along with that. So that to a certain extent mirrors a bit of Japan. Okay? What Japan does not have, you mentioned the accords that Japan went through.
Plaza Accords.
Plaza
Accords,
right?
yeah, in the
Plaza
19... I think it was 1990.
But
1990.
regardless,
Yeah, okay,
the whole
yeah.
deflation, the whole stagflation. I think that's probably the
For about
the word.
for about 30 years, for about a generation.
Almost 30 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because when I graduated, I worked for a Japanese firm,
Right.
and this was in Australia, and then they really virtually imploded, and just they were buying real estate in Australia,
here's-
left, right, and center, if you remember.
Here's the
Yeah.
thing that I see the difference.
Mm.
And Japan at that particular time in the 90s had a per capita GDP, if I'm not mistaken, in excess of $30,000.
Oh yeah.
And that is beyond, I mean, that is already quite a rich country. Okay? The China, on the other hand, we are looking at a per capita GDP at present. Some numbers put it at 12,000
So around about that,
dollars.
12,000, yeah.
Some put it at 13,000 on the high end, right? So that is after inflation, right? So you've got two levels of, in terms of the how much the individual population
Yeah.
actually have money in their pocket. That's one. The other thing that I saw, and it's a big, is that the property speculation in Japan were mainly business and corporate. It's not individual. It's really not at the population level. Whereas in China, the property bubble was fueled by the average Joe down the street, because it is a form of savings or investment on their part, and that bubble has practically burst. Production capacity with or without something, with or without Trump coming into office this year, right? It was going that way already. Manufacturing
of course.
capacity was already going that way, which means that, I mean, they've already become the producer of the world. 30% of production of the world manufacturing comes from China way before Trump comes into office. That never was the issue with Japan, right? So, and I think our last conversation, I've already said, I had my big concern, which is the economic planning in China is very dispersed. Is very dispersed in terms of how it is handled, which is a good and a bad thing. A good thing in the sense that I think that's more capitalistic and what do you call, and self-generated at regional level.
Yeah.
Right? And that's why they succeeded very well with the Deng reformation. However, there is also a limit to that, in the sense that there's a tipping point where actually when everybody is chasing growth and allocation of capital is unfettered by your balance sheet or your P&L because you're a one-party system, that is what I think caused an overbuilding of infrastructure and an overbuilding of construction. So, I mean, this is
Yeah.
these concerns is
I-
where
I-
maybe I
I
mean, I
don't-
thought
I-
maybe
yeah.
what how do you view that? How do you this is something,
Because it all premise, Shamsul, it all premise on how you look at the numbers and how the resources are being applied in China, whether it's good or bad.
yeah.
Going back to the property, I think this is again, deflationary, inflation, population collapse, property market collapse seems to be like 3-4 pointers that I find a lot of Western economists hang their analysis on China and say, okay, so this is why we should be concerned. And I think it is misplaced. I mean, it has maybe perhaps either it's a because it doesn't suit a certain narrative, or it's so I tend to move away from that, and rather I look from the viewpoint of the Chinese people themselves, how they see their economy and how they want to drive their country and how they see the world. Okay, coming back to property speculation. I remember, like I said, when I first graduated, when I was in Australia, I was actually working for a Japanese firm. And I remember at that time in the 80s, Japanese were buying real estate everywhere. New York, London, and I believe Japan, and apparently, even just just around where the Tokyo Palace is in Tokyo, the price of the real estate, the value of the real estate was something equivalent to the whole of California, something really, really, really ridiculous like that. So therefore, there was a bubble.
Mm-hmm.
What China did as a country was, with the surplus and the savings that they had, they started buying resources, Africa, South America, and they invested. Some went good, some went bad, but they didn't. You don't see big corporations buying real estate like the Japanese did. They may buy, but not speculative. Coming back to speculation, at the ground level, I agree with you. That was what was driven. In many ways, because China doesn't allow people to speculate in the stock market because they don't want the economy to be financialized, which means it is going to hollow out the manufacturing, and then money is going to be put into the stock market, like New York Stock Exchange, right? So the wealth is actually focused on Wall Street. They didn't want that. So they wanted people to save. And then at that time, the property boom in China seemed to be the way to save your,
It's a very traditional,
it's very traditional
way of thinking that we used to have as well.
But the thing is, 90%. You see, it's different from when you say, oh, property collapse, oh, people are going to be on the streets. But it's not like that in China. 90 odd percent of people in China have own homes, compared to 60 odd percent in the United States. Right? So it is two different things. People who got hurt were the speculators, for sure. And people have been talking about, and the market, when it cracked, when the bubble burst in 2020, it was right at the middle of the pandemic, because they can't be going to houses and things like this. So you had the property collapse. That was 5 years ago. Okay, so it's a to me it's a slow release, but it doesn't mean that the problem is not gone away. And I feel that the way the way China does its central planning, it is definitely not perfect, but it has worked for them. And I don't think if people are looking at China and think, oh, okay, we're going to see a collapse. Yeah, I think there's going to be correction. It's going to be a very tough,
reckoning.
Reckoning 5-6 years. But I don't see, people in China, and again, I'm looking at it from the other way. I mean, I first went to China in 1989, 1990, when Shenzhen was just a fishing village. Now, it's still in people's living memory today in China. They do remember those days. Now, how bad is it going to be? Are we going to go back to the 1980s? That's how.
No,
you know what I mean?
I know.
You got to look at how people measure and see themselves in the scheme of things. How bad is it going to be?
I'm looking at it more from a macro standpoint, because why? In essence, when I evaluate or I do an analysis, I'm really looking at the macro. I don't think, as what you just said, that things are gonna revert back to the 1980s. I don't see that ever happening.
Yeah.
Okay. What is of real concern is actually, the Deng Reformation has been a great success for China, and that went for almost
30 years,
3
yeah,
decades.
3 decades, yeah.
3 decades.
1989.
Right. So, and then I think, like with any, I guess I am. It's not the Western narrative that I'm looking for. I am a guy who I look at things from what I see happens in developing countries, and I still consider, if you look at China GDP per capita at 12,000, right? That's about where we are. Actually, that's about where we are.
For 1 billion.
Regardless,
Yeah,
irrespective, for 1 billion, that shows for a 1 billion population, that shows the scale of the improvement, right? Okay, but when you go to, when I always say, when you move from agrarian economy into an industrialized economy, you're basically moving. You basically jumpstart a productivity growth of double digit immediately as it goes, because 50% of your population, including women, are gonna start working into a productivity, a high productivity sector, which is industrial, right? So that has always been, to me, from an economic standpoint, has always been a given. Any nation that goes from agrarian to industrialization is going to see double-digit growth. Okay, how well it gets there depends on policies. So you have to give it to China. They have done extremely well for the first 3 decades of that particular reformation. Okay, we went through double-digit growth as well until we had one party system where the leadership decided that they would rather be concerned about their place in power than actually moving the country beyond what it is. And if I were to put any lessons for Malaysia vis-a-vis China, is that we start building up GLCs, which in China is called SOEs, right? State-owned entity, to now compete with the private sector, right? So the private sector itself took a backseat. And there are so many issues actually when I look at it, that to me it's almost like I'm not looking at a Western narrative. I am looking at my comparison in philosophy and in terms of economic execution.
I couldn't agree more with you on the GLC part. I think it's about time that our GLCs compete with the private sector, because there has been significant crowding out of the private sector in terms of the way the banks lend to a private sector versus the way they lend it to GLCs, because it's some political directive that comes down from somewhere. You must, do it this way or do it this way or whatever, So that one I completely agree with you. I think if there's any sense of improving our productivity, improving the way we compete, our competitiveness, that has to be the way to go.
So I'm looking at it, going back to China, basically.
So,
what I saw was, I want to go back to China because I digressed it.
Okay.
This one.
So coming
right?
back to China, I think the competition between the provinces it's almost like another country versus a different country. The way they compete on things, they're very, very competitive. That's why you have so many how many brands of EV cars, and maybe now today only a handful has survived. BYD, of course. Zeekr on the luxury market, and Xiaomi, and probably going to be a handful. But there are plenty of brands. It's not just one Tesla, Whereas in America, it's actually an antithesis of what they believe in capitalism, is that they funded Tesla because they believed in one thing. Okay, and they went with all the eggs in one basket. And I don't know if Tesla is going to even be able to compete now. Globally.
I think, to me, when I look at, let's say, Tesla, for example, I don't see Tesla for as an American company, because the way I look at American capitalism is actually they just go out and whoever
but the point being is that Tesla was subsidized, SpaceX is subsidized, otherwise it won't be able to compete.
Well, let's put it this way. I already said
So
that actually
it is not going to it's to iPhone, for example,
but
right?
let's put it this way. Isn't all the renewable or EV companies subsidized all over the world, including China?
Yeah, but then there is competition.
Well, there goes.
You see what I mean? So just like our GLCs, I think there should be competition.
Well, here goes my point on that, actually. No, here goes my point, actually. I don't think any of these industries should be subsidized.
Yeah.
If you ask me, I don't think Tesla should be subsidized. I don't think BYD should be subsidized. None of these EV companies should be subsidized.
Yeah, but who are we to say that model is wrong for China? It worked for them.
And the same goes that I think Tesla should never be subsidized. And I'm so glad to see, actually, that Trump is pulling the subsidies away. You go and compete. Then again,
but it won't. But it's already too late.
Yeah, but
it's already too late.
Somebody's got to do it at some point.
Yeah, it's already too late. I mean, I think for as far as EVs are concerned, it's already too late for America, whether you're going to pull the subsidy or not.
Well, at the end of the day, I'm looking at then it goes to that overproduction situation that we face, right? The world is seeing overproduction. Okay, it impacts China in a sense that, because as you rightly put when we first open up this conversation, that the that 30% of manufacturing production is China for the world, right? Almost every country that we can think of are on trade deficit. This is not a sustainable model. No country can have trade deficits with every other country on earth and sustain that model vis-a-vis their trade partners. I can't see that being sustainable.
How long did the British Empire have a trade surplus with the rest of the world?
That's the difference. The difference is that part of the century and it collapsed.
It does. But
collapsed.
then how long did it last?
Yeah. But
You know what I mean?
I
It's
am
not going to
of
be
the-
tomorrow.
I'm of the opinion
Yeah.
that actually when I look at the long arc of history,
Yeah.
technology and economy has shortened every cycle. The further we go back to history, the longer the empire stood. You know, the Roman Empire was thousands of years old, right? And then we get the Mongols, we get the Islamic Empire, the Ottomans. Everything becomes shorter and shorter because of technology, and technology and commerce become making the world borderless.
Yeah, but I just don't think that it is going to be the property market and the deflation that's going to collapse China.
I'm
The
not
way that
looking
you
at
said,
collapsing.
The way you put, I think we're talking about two different perspectives
Fui.
here. Yes, China will collapse one day.
No.
It's a matter of course of history. If you want to put it
I'm
that
not
way,
worried.
right?
I wouldn't call it a collapse.
Right.
I never use the word collapse. Okay, what I use the word is the use of the word that I use is basically if I don't talk about stagflation, it's
Yeah.
almost like the way I see how America was going, especially after the second Obama term, right? What I saw was a hollowing out of manufacturing. It's a different problem in America, right?
Oh, yeah.
A hollowing out of manufacturing, and I think China learned from that, which is a hollowing out of manufacturing,
Which is why they're holding on to it.
and
Even at
then
a cost.
money going to the capital market, and the same goes with UK and to a certain extent Brussels as well, which is everybody in reliance of the capital market as
Yeah.
being the growth for the economy rather than manufacturing.
Correct.
Now they're paying the price for it.
Yep.
Yeah, and the only country actually, for better or worse, in spite of his sharp elbows, I do think that Trump is making a go of turning around what I consider a Chapter 11 America, right? Being involved in the corporate sector, I understand Chapter 11s are chaotic. Okay? Now, going back to China, when I say I don't see a collapse, what I'm looking at is actually a concern that actually if you are about to drown in that sense, right? Japan drowned in the 90s for 30 years. Okay?
They didn't die.
They did not die. Absolutely. They did not die.
If it's not a that's
But
why I
the
don't say, if
difference
it's
is-
not a collapse, so then it's a correction.
But
in
but-
economic language,
But
right?
this is
Shan?
the
Sounds like-
difference. Okay.
You know what I mean? So if it's not, then it's a correction.
I'm
That's how
trying to- let-
I'm using economic terms here, right?
let me move to where I think we probably have about the same
So you have a correction.
the
So
same-
it's not a collapse.
let's
right?
the same the what do you call, where we find the ground and then we move from there. Because why? It took China 30 years of correction, so to speak. They didn't quite
No,
die.
I don't.
They didn't quite die.
I don't think 30 years of. I don't think that's a correction, Samso. It is 30 years of growth, of building up a foundation. Correction means you grow. I mean, in economic
Go,
terms,
go,
okay? I mean, in
go.
economic terms,
Go, correct
correction
me,
mean-
correct me if
I mean,
you see
today
so.
You say correction. It's a complete, like you said, it's a mega shift from agrarian to industrialization. That's
Yeah.
not a correction.
No.
That's
But
a
but
total-
then
that's a
when they
total
they
pivoting.
went through stagflation.
Yeah, so
and
you're talking about Japan or
I'm
China?
talking about Japan.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Oh, sorry,
Okay.
sorry.
So
Because we were.
you
know what I mean? Okay,
so I'm
Japan.
I'm
Okay.
just using Japan as a
Okay,
comparison
okay,
first.
okay, right.
Okay, so I'm taking what happened to Japan. Okay, the difference is I think Japan, when it hit its situation,
Yeah.
it was already relatively rich, and if you add up the inflation for the monetary inflation, they were beyond that $30 if you go by the dollar today. Okay, so we are looking at what's happening in China now with a few, I think, structural issues that are of concern. What
No, what are the structural issues that are of concern? I mean, let's be specific and then address one by one.
Okay, I think
You know?
I've mentioned
Yeah.
one. I've mentioned one that the savings went mostly into actually domestic what do you call domestic overproduction of
into
construction
the property, into
property.
properties. Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
one. Second, I think the overbuilding of infrastructure. Okay, it looks impressive. Okay, but then what is happening, like you rightly put, you've got regional expansion because everybody is on their KPI. Every CCP official of every region need to show that their GDP is at that rate that actually they are building and building and building, even if the P&L and the balance sheet doesn't show the results. Okay, the other part that actually is it becomes a problem for the world as well is the supply chain is so dependent on China, and also that the world cannot consume that much production from China. I mean, I've seen solar, renewables, EVs going below cost to the world. That there is a backlash. Now, I frame that. Okay, so there is where I add another problem, which is actually the only way they are also having to manage this issue is to export that particular model, and it's going through the region. You just said that actually we are getting all these very productive, very efficient industries that are coming to our country, totally China,
Yeah.
and probably killing out our domestic industry.
Yes, I think you're conflating.
that's-
because I think you're conflating a few things together.
Okay,
I think
go.
one. Let's
Go.
look
I've
at
talked too much.
Yeah.
Your
Yeah.
turn.
For an interviewer, you're talking too much.
No, it's a conversation.
I know. I'm just joking. I mean,
Okay.
we're both friends. Okay, so
Yeah.
I mean,
Go.
this is that. Yeah.
So I want
So
to
the
hear from
structural.
you.
Okay, I think a few things. I mean, we come back to what is China's policy makers' nightmare, and what is our Malaysian policy makers' nightmare. Let's they're two different things,
They're
right?
two
Yeah,
different
they're two
things.
different things
Yeah.
because we will one is good for the other, or one is actually bad for the other. We don't know yet. Okay, but it looks like it's the latter. Let's address China first. Okay.
Yes, please.
You're talking about I agree with you. You know, when the China bubble burst, property market burst, I think a lot of people extremely angry, right? To a point that they could could have been almost a revolution, because yes, people have been working 20, 30 years, hard-earned money and everything put in property. Why? Because they were told to put into property. They were told that was the best investment. That's how you protect your nest egg. But to me, I think that danger for the CCP is, I think that danger point is pretty much over now. As if you want to talk about a concern for policymakers, simply
Right.
because, as I said, that's why deflation, if anything, that kind of helps to calm down the issue. So imagine if you had lost your so-called significant amount
All your,
of your
let's say
savings
your
in
70% of
yeah,
your savings.
and then plus you have inflation of 7% or 10 or 12%, like in Russia. I think you could have a very, very volatile situation, social unrest in China today, and that hasn't happened because simply because prices are managed, right? Are managed, so people are seeing the purchasing power going up, not going down. For a cup of coffee, they're actually paying less today. So it's a good thing. It's like what we went through in the 80s and the 90s, pajamas. I remember when I was studying in Australia, I remember buying clothes from Target and things like this. It was really expensive. But then in the 90s and the 20s, when China started dumping pajamas and bed sheets and all that in Australia, everything was just, lampshades and things like furniture. Just, it was like new furniture. I mean, people had to buy second-hand furniture back in the 80s, Now people buying new furniture. Yeah, remember that?
Yeah.
Right? And people now buying
actually,
new
right now the furnitures are so cheap. I couldn't believe it.
You cannot believe it.
Yeah.
Back in the days. So this is what's happening in China right now. So I think for the CCP, for the central government, what is really, really important for them is managing social unrest.
Yeah.
And inflation from a Marxist-Leninist school of economics viewpoint, that is the very thing that they, in their mind, that is prime. Now, whether you agree with it or not, they see dynasties collapse. Why? Because always running inflation. When goods become unaffordable for the people. That is when and that's how China sees it, because they see it from their viewpoint of their own history. Right? So I think in that sense, I feel that I think it's a little bit too presumptuous to assume that a collapse in the property prices coupled with deflationary is necessarily a bad thing from a Chinese economic policy viewpoint. It is not ideal. They rather not have the problem, but I don't see that as I don't get that they feel that it is a serious issue anymore.
Can you address the concern on being the ban when your prices are so depressed because of overproduction that your margin is, we are looking at about, I think the last data, because it's very difficult to look at data in China.
Yes, it is.
It's so difficult. You only take data. I mean, you take the best way is to take the government official data. That's all I'm doing.
Yeah. So if you agree that what's happening in China is not a collapse, but a structural correction, then it's a correction. It's something that they have to de-risk. And how they're doing it, this is where it concerns us as Malaysians and as non-China, is that they are dumping stocks. It's a classic dumping strategy, right?
Yep.
We should have, but we are not able to say it's anti-dumping because China is not a, I think under WTO, they're not a fully developed economy nation.
Well, if I'm not mistaken,
so that has to be addressed. And I think
that is being addressed.
I think that has to be addressed.
Yeah.
So once that is addressed, and this is how and that's where we should be lobbying as ASEAN. But then we dare not, because why?
We're scared of Big Brother.
Because we're scared, okay?
Yeah.
We dare not do that. So, but that is the crux of the matter. If that is what China is doing to try to solve its own problems, which I okay, from their viewpoint, they're doing the right thing. Okay, my people, all that kind of thing. Yeah, but it is hurting us. So on the flip side, we dare not, because like you said, 40 billion a year is a lot, right?
It is. It's 10% of our GDP, my God.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, that's a dilemma. That's a dilemma for us to resolve. So, I don't see that as a major concern of the China economy, because I think they know what they're doing. It's us that's scared.
I mean, that's basically where the problem lies, because it's not us that's just scared. Because, I mean, we've got now, I mean, there used to be the saying, right? When America catch a cold, you know, everybody else gets sick. Now we've got two economies. If China, if China have a sinus, we probably going to have flu. You know.
No, we're gonna have COVID.
Yeah. So, and the biggest, and I mean, when your population is as big as their population is bigger than the whole of Southeast Asia, right? And their production is, well, as I said, you're talking about, you know, more than a quarter of the world, right? There's only so many markets that can take that production. Okay.
Their strategy is I think they see the problem. I think what you're saying is not something that they say, oh yeah, okay, you know, no issue.
I don't think
I don't think
what
I don't
are their
think it is
solution
not.
for that, especially?
Oh, their solution is very easy. The solution is I go and buy up, because I've already bought so many resource-rich countries, right? For example, you know, Africa and so on and that. I bring back resources. It's a classic capitalist model, right? I mean, that's what Britain did to China, to India. Bring back cotton, produce cotton, sell back cotton to India. Simple. I mean, in a very classical capital world.
Yep.
I mean, you know, that was it. Adam Smith's model. Yeah, you go and get raw. That's exactly what they're doing. So, and in order to so-called not be accused of exploiting the lesser world, they build bridges for you. They build
Not for
roads.
free, though.
No, not, of course it's not for free. But you know, that's how it's done. I think they've for as far as China is concerned, that they're not doing anything different that is immorally, you know, immoral.
I don't view the world, to be honest with you, from my point of view. I guess I'm a less, sorry guys, I guess I'm a less empathetic fella from a capitalistic standpoint. I just look at the world as what it is.
Yeah, they're just using the same game. I mean, I you know, it's just been played before.
I know.
It's just that they
I'm
don't,
trying to make sense.
They just don't put, you know, guns in your doorsteps. I mean, well, not yet anyway.
unless
not yet.
unless you're running the Philippine boats at the Spratlys.
Yeah, something like that. I mean,
Yeah,
at least
no.
not yet.
But
You know?
at least
So in that sense, they I mean, China just claims, you know, some moral high ground. Says, look, we are trying to, and their strategy is very simple. Prosper thy neighbor, you prosper yourself.
Let me at this point I'll take a short break. I
Yeah,
want to
sure,
tell
sure.
the audience, viewers, if you like this conversation, geopolitics or domestic issues on policies and analyzing things that we have over at Gutshot and going straight to the point as what we are doing right
Yeah.
now, please like, subscribe, so that you know you will get YouTube algorithm coming direct to you as soon as a episode drops. Yeah. Okay, we'll continue.
Okay.
So now,
Great.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing that I am still personally not as convinced as you are in terms how they're gonna be able to manage. I see the latest month-to-month data this year, especially in terms of government revenue.
Yep.
It's all in single digit. In March, they put in additional taxation in order to provide revenue for their fiscal budget expenditure, and that number originally spiked up, you know, to a higher digit, and it's come October, it's gone negative. So I still have question mark, in spite of what you just said, with respect to structural reforms. More because I think, and I still think that the model, I'm not sure how much you can control the model at regional level when the main incentive is building as much as you can. From the normal people's standpoint, it's got. I'm not assigning any morality to what I'm saying.
I know what you're saying. I think there is definitely. I don't think I deny, or nor the policymakers deny that there is an overcapacity, a manufacturing overcapacity, in China. I think what they're addressing it because I suppose the good thing about the Trump tariffs are that it shocked the system. It woke up China and said, look, we need to do something about this. And I think one way to bridge it from a Chinese policymaker's viewpoint, which is bad for us, is dumping, right? Until and unless we are.
But they were
strong
already
enough.
Dumping, don't you think, before the Trump tariffs?
They were.
Yeah.
So why are we not doing something about it? Like I said, WTO, one of them is like, we should take them to task, right? Under WTO. Okay. Now, it didn't happen, but Trump came in, and this is what happened. So now they're going out, and I buy resources from you, I sell you manufactured goods. That is, to me, their stopgap measure. Right now, they're desperately trying to move. This is how I see it. What they're trying to do is they do realize that I think eventually you cannot continue to manufacture like forever. You can't. So, like most developed countries do, they move into the service sector and they move into high-end manufacturing. And that's where you see Teslas and the Apples and the phones and all that probably going to India and Bangladesh and places like that. I think under Xi Jinping, if I'm not mistaken, about 10 years ago, they were already moving what you call dirty industries out. Sweatshops, the Nikes and the all that. He has always wanted to move that out way about 10 years ago when he first came in. He says China has to go high end. But as entrepreneurs, it's easy market. I sell to Target, I sell to Walmart, I sell to, Sainsbury, it's so much easier, right? So I feel that the Trump tariffs is something that the policies are not necessarily unhappy about, to move up the value chain, to be honest.
Well, it's forcing them at least to,
it's forcing them to move up the value chain, which is what the part of the CCP plan of 15 plenary 15-year plan,
the fourth
5-year 5-year plan. Oh my goodness!
Which is like what, 2027 is the
something like that.
Yeah.
But they've already achieved it, 5 years. Already. You see, that's the thing. With the Chinese, they think in centuries. But anyway. What I'm saying is that moving out of the low end is something that was something that the central planners were trying to do even way before Trump came. And another thing about Trump, the way he went in, all guns blazing and everything, I think that's a gift to the CCP. Suddenly everybody says, okay, I'm going to manufacture, although my margins are going to be squeezed, but because I got to stand up to America, let's do it. I will even use my savings to pay my workers to keep the factory going, simply because we need to stand up to America. I mean, that's how the narrative is being used in China. I don't see that from a Chinese viewpoint. The way they have played the Trump tariff narrative is, it was actually to the benefit of the CCP. In many ways. So I'm not saying that there's no issues. There are definitely structural issues, but they have very cleverly used that to I think the many things in there they're doing. One is that moving up the value chain, dumping all these stocks dumping all these things to countries like us, because knowing that we will, at this point in time, we are not at the point where we can actually stand up to China and WTO. They will do it until that such time. But I suppose this is where we need America too, right? I think the housing bubble is pretty much over, meaning that the slow release, the pressure cooker, and I think that is pretty much done. How they have managed it is they have managed the prices to keep the prices low, electricity bills low, transportation low, and wages stable, keeping housing prices low, or at least stabilize it, making sure that people have roofs over their heads, making sure that the managing income disparity. So out of that housing market, they have done these several things to keep at least at the societal level stabilized. For them, that is primary.
How do you see how do you see they're doing that in terms of managing income disparity?
Like you say, developing. Now, if you go to the third tier cities, so-called third tier cities, way out in the rural areas, developing, like you say, bridges, infrastructure, railway, metro, subways.
Isn't that gonna increase your overcapacity, your overbuilding of construction network again?
Yeah, but then you are actually spreading the wealth into the contractor at the local level. He is making money, and yet his material prices are stable or even falling.
For how long can you do that?
Yeah, but it's a structure. You are addressing a structural issue, right? Of this, you asked me how they did it, and this is how they've done it. And that is why in the last 5 years...
There's going to be a limit to that.
They will. So when the next problem comes, it will have to be something else. So how do you think they have actually raised, erased poverty for 800 million people?
I agree with you on that part, on the
initial
part.
Yeah, you're asking me how it was done. So this is how they did it, and this is how they have overcome it. So now the next step is, where is the next growth coming from?
Yeah.
The next growth is, as the last plenary session was, they have to go AI. They will have to go that way.
Well, that comes another problem where we are looking at about 20%. I mean, I can't wrap my head around this AI thing, to be honest with you. I mean, not just for China, but from a global standpoint and even from our standpoint, right? I don't know where that industry is going, how much is going to impact the employment sector overall, because the last time, I mean, efficiency improves. Really, there's only so few people who can actually go into the software business. You can't retrain your 40s people in their 40s, so that, I think, poses another challenge, not just for China, but for the world overall. And I'm not very positive about that.
So coming back to where China is looking at AI, why are they pushing AI so strongly? On one hand, we say that there's a population decreasing and it's going to be a problem. And China is saying, look, I'm trying to push people up on the value chain. The more people on AI, the less people I have, less mouths I have to feed. GDP will be divided by a smaller number. How is that bad for me? I don't understand. So we are contradicting ourselves when we look at. I know. I'm just saying. We as in analysts, and AI. Why are people concerned about AI? I mean, there was people are talking about .com. AI bubble is going to burst. I say, what is bursting? What is bursting is actually stock prices, right? Just like the .com bubble. Does that mean today we are not using internet? Hey, hello.
No, they'll always.
You know what I mean? It is actually what you're talking about is two different things. The application of AI, or you're talking about AI stocks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
At the end of the day, I believe in this. I think even the .com bubble, what happens at the end of the day, the stock market burst because there was over speculation.
Yeah, same thing with AI
what they
now.
call
Yeah.
the irrational exuberance of
All the Greenspans in those days, it wasn't called quantitative easing in those days. It was called I can't remember what
yeah,
it was.
I know.
Anyways,
But
when the
you know what I mean.
I know what
you
you mean.
yeah.
We were old enough to live through
that, right? So I mean, but at the end of the day, each of those revolution left remnants of technology that are applicable to the efficiency improvement that we see today. So I think the same will happen with the AI. The only difference I see also is I guess I'm too old to really understand just how disruptive the remaining tools that will end up, you know, and how much impact it will have on especially white collar employment. But going then, I mean, segueing actually out of China itself, which we did touch a bit, is this issue with respect to how China then eases its internal issues to the rest of the world. In our region, as you rightly put, we see their industry shifting over here. And I do believe it will be at the expense of the domestic. And I think WTO is not the answer, if you ask me. The reason WTO is not the answer is because I think every country looks after its own sovereignty and how it's going to handle it.
Yeah.
You know?
I don't think WTO, I don't mean to say that WTO is the answer. I think it is definitely a pressure point to at least channel our concerns to China. At this point in time, I feel China is still, let's put it this way, still cares about how it's being viewed by the rest of the world until it doesn't. I don't know what that they do. I still feel that they.
I think
they
that
do.
mood is shifting. If you
Yeah,
ask
it
me.
is shifting very fast. So that's why
It's
I say
shifting too fast.
It's shifting very fast.
Yeah, it's shifting.
Okay, it's shifting very fast.
It's shifting
and
very.
coming back to AI, again, you know, we're running away from it. Actually, talking about AI. Believe it or not, how China and Russia and maybe to a point BRICS, how they view AI is it is going to take jobs away. It is going to take jobs away. And because it's going to take jobs away, it also will affect the distribution of wealth, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Then you will have maybe 0.001% of people who own AI companies will be making like trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars, and then, you know, the guy that sells roti to deliver your roti to your house would be making like, you know, $1 a day or something.
You probably won't have people delivering rotis anymore.
You won't because
It'll probably be sent by drones.
Yeah, because that drone is owned by this 0.001% of this trillionaires and all that, right? So I think that inevitably will cause a social collapse, which is something that China will not want. And I think this is where the irony is.
I don't think any country wants that.
No country, and which is why I feel in the trajectory, okay, it will not be capitalism, but one of socialism.
Huh.
Yeah, I think that would be the model of the 21st century.
You guys are you and I gonna disagree a lot on that one, but you know, leave it that as another topic for another day.
Because I don't see how else you can redistribute wealth.
I'm not.
And I don't think you can stop AI. It's like stopping, I don't know.
It's like stopping
our YouTube. Like our YouTube. I mean, how is it possible that we can do this today?
Yeah, I know.
Right, because it was
the broadcast news is dead.
Yeah, it's dead. So you can't stop AI. I don't see how you can do it. The ship has sailed. So
Yeah.
China knows that. Big countries know that. I don't know how America is going to adapt to it.
Yeah.
Which is why
No,
we
this
cre-
is
which
still
is why
something
which
is
is
a
why
big
which
question.
is which is a big question.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is a big question.
But I think let's pin that point for a while and for another conversation. I wanna
I just want to say that I'm not a political scientist.
neither no
So
I mean
but you know what I mean.
no I mean let's put it this way, as everybody knows your background is hugely an economics guy.
economics.
know?
Okay lah, political economics.
Right.
You know, but
And
it is in many ways not a separate thing. But I am not what I'm trying to say is that I'm not an expert on political theory. Okay, let's put it that way.
I guess I think I'm coming from the point of view of somebody who I mean I'm a trained engineer, and I've been building up business from the time I left multinational corporations, right, from in my 30s, and I'm now in my 60s, guys.
Okay, we shall not go there.
Yeah,
I think I'm just on the brink.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, we're both trying to keep. We're still energized.
I
We're
hope
still
so.
energized to have this conversation. Yeah. So my point of view is what interests me and has always interested me is the analysis of what goes on, because it gives people like ourselves, policymakers, people who actually look at what is happening and make up their own mind, based on what they hear. That is our role to a
That's right,
certain
that's right,
extent.
yeah.
So I wanna go to this side, which is how it impacts us, how it impacts the rest of the world. Here's my starting point of the discussion. As I said, they've got no choice. It's got nothing to do with whether they're good or they're bad or whatever. I've got no morality pin into this.
Correct.
If I'm in their situation,
You probably do the same, right?
I will do the same.
Yeah.
Which is actually, okay, I see another market I'm going to come in, right? And I'm going to see whether I can get a market share in that particular country, right? And that is already happening in this region, which means that, and I think I'm going to say this again, I think I'm trying to find an analysis or a solution outside of the WTO, because I think that organization is almost dead.
Yeah, what you're trying to say is that we need
What do we do?
we need a pushback strategy.
Right.
Okay.
So can I
that that I agree with you.
Yeah,
okay?
can
We
I
need
get one more thing in,
Yeah.
right? We are a richer nation, relatively speaking, than Africa, right? Where and upper Asia, where a lot of the investments done, where the export of GDP in terms of building up infrastructure were taken on debt, for railways, ports, and at the end of the day, these poor countries cannot pay. And actually what they see is their assets, or supposedly what became of their assets, being taken over by Chinese companies. Okay? It's almost like, imagine the feeling that you take a bank loan to buy your house, and 10 years down the road, you can't pay and they foreclose you and you've got no more house. And the only thing that comes out of that is going to be local resentment, and all politics are local.
Yeah.
Right? Malaysia, I think we are slightly lucky because our GDP per capita is about what they are. But the fact that they can come and swamp us because, as you rightly put, their population is so huge that their efficiency level, we cannot compete. So where do you see, we're going to handle this?
First of all, you need to look at the amount of what these third world countries, if you want to call them third world countries, developing countries or whatever, owe to the IMF and owe to the World Bank compared to China. China's Belt and Road I think the lendings are only makes up maybe about 20 to 30% of the entire loan. So these African countries are poor in the first place. It's not because they owe China, it's because they owe IMF and World Bank for decades. Right? I think you need to come from that premise, to be fair. Right? And how this is and how China is actually dealing with it, I believe, is the pullback. I think there are, okay, maybe because also they have, issues at home, but the pullback on the BRI is somewhat because of that kind of backlash that they say, okay, so everyone's saying that we can't do this. So they're a lot more careful now how they're actually going to deal with, and a lot more selective than they did before.
Or is that also a combination of the cash flow is with
I think it's also a
combination.
It's a combination of both. Okay, it's a combination of both.
I think it's both.
It's both. So it's not one or the other. And to say that actually, we are, Rajapaksa, Sri Lanka losing this, and what do you call debt trap? My God, I tell you, if you want to talk about debt trap, IMF and World Bank's debt trap, I think is way more massive, way more massive. At least 3 times more. So and how the African nations and all that kind of thing, because you also got to see what kind of technology transfer. I believe China is not at the point where they want to see themselves as replacing. I mean, I'm not. I know you're not saying that. Replacing America in any way. They are trying to resolve their domestic problems, issue of overcapacity, which is hurting us. I mean, we don't have a pushback strategy. I think none of us have. I don't have one. I don't have one.
You don't have one?
I don't have one. I don't have one. I mean, I'm not making excuses to say that, okay, this debt trap there is not real. Of course it's real. But to actually pin it down to on that alone, I think we're also misplacing our narrative. Do we have a pushback strategy?
I don't think we do.
I don't really think we do. Even Singapore doesn't have it. You think all of us have?
No, Singapore has.
Singapore, all they can say is that we got a lot of money, we got a lot of savings.
Singapore
we can write
has a
anything.
very simple business model. Their 2 biggest sector is actually shipping and
Finance,
right? And the money coming from this from our region is.
I think what we are also missing, Shamsul, is that we look at it. Oh yes, pushback and flooding our market and things like this. But there's just so many things happening at the same time. What you're saying is that there is going to be new trade routes that is shifting away from the maritime. Not shifting away, actually parallel to the maritime. That's happening. Such as land. I mean, where China is coming from, they have never been good at maritime, and maritime is always been dominated by the West. So what do? They build pipelines. Power of Siberia 2, for example, is a classic example of, okay, so you're going to jam Straits of Malacca, jam Straits of Hormuz and all that. They build a pipeline from China, Xinjiang, into the Altai Mountains in Russia. Once that's done in 2-3 years' time, that's going to be 50 billion cubic metric tons or something like that of oil into China, and that will actually be able to fuel their whatever AI agenda that they have for the next 50 years, and cheaply too.
I mean, from as an oil and gas guy,
you are an oil and gas guy.
Huh?
Yeah, you are an oil and gas guy.
It's the pipeline thing has always been has always been the norm in that in the
right?
in the industry.
And trade
But
routes on the northern sea routes, right?
trade
that-
as a whole is a different ball game altogether. I
You know,
don't.
I came back from Jakarta. I'm sorry, I'm interrupting, but then I want to keep
Go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
I want to keep the conversation going. For example, like I just came back from Jakarta. I was talking to some money movers, lah. Okay, if you want to call them for a better word. It's no long. In fact, if you want to talk about money, it's no longer New York. It's not even China, not even Hong Kong, not even Singapore. It's actually the Middle East.
Yeah.
Everybody is going to the Middle East to borrow money, to do deals and things like. The Russians are there, the Chinese are there. That's why Trump is there. Okay.
Oil money.
Yeah. I mean, that itself, the geopolitics is. I mean, money talks, right? Geopolitics are going to shift there. So, I think we mustn't confine ourselves to a static analysis of what's going on. Although it does not doesn't solve our problem, lah. Okay.
May I interject a bit on that? Actually, I think the part. I think I hope that our audience understand one thing. Sometimes I hope that when we talk like this, we will get people to start shifting and also understand. And I agree with you totally on that point. You know, the monetary center of the world has shifted to the Middle East.
Yeah.
Right.
And also, okay, let's look at gold. Okay, I'm not here to tell people to speculate, but look at the gold price. Gold setting now. It's no longer going to be LBMA. It's probably not going to be COMEX anymore. It's going to be shifting to China. And China is building, I believe, 4 gold vaults. One in Hong Kong, one in Singapore. Okay, Singapore is not Dodo. Okay, one in Saudi. 3 outside. Okay, and of course Shanghai.
Well, okay, I have
Right.
my own.
So that in itself, setting of prices of minerals, of precious metals, of RE, is no longer going to be in the hands of the Western markets.
Well, I think on gold, I have my own opinion. I think there's a limitation with respect to the mineral capacity.
I'm talking about minerals in general.
Yeah,
okay?
Well, minerals
right?
in general, in my opinion, REE, we will get to a point where actually it is not as rare as people think. And the thing is, anybody who thinks that they have a lead in REE, either production,
refining,
deluding themselves. Okay, the problem has always been is because the Western country and even ourselves. Look at how long we actually stop Linas from operating, right? And now we're like, and now there's something happening with Linas. We are going, you know. I mean,
that one I don't want to talk. Okay.
Okay.
That one, that one I tell you, the Linus problem. I mean that it's just purely. There's so many things in this country. It was purely political,
Right.
and we were held back purely
right.
because of politics.
Yeah.
Okay, and we believed in the whole narrative, hook, line, and sinker. In fact, I had a conversation with Rafida Aziz, I think back in this Terengganu by-election. She says, "What's wrong?" I mean, she knew the whole deal. She says, "Look, this is something that's really good for our country. Why are we stopping this?"
Yeah. No, and also for me as
that was 2010.
as a business person and as with a background in science and engineering, I think for as early as I could remember, I was a big proponent of nuclear, and I saw this REE, and I'm like, I was shaking my head, and I'm gonna say this to everybody, okay?
So now REE is not a dirty word anymore.
Yeah. And I'll put it this way too. And I've been saying this for a long time. Fossil fuels are not fossils.
And how much time have we lost?
Not just time, money, productivity, and wealth for our people. And we are worried about climate change. I mean, I'm just, but
we are digressing.
yeah, but we are digressing. So I felt that when we look at so I have something that I felt that we should be looking at in terms of policy strategy, right? And take a leaf from what the Americans are doing, right? Which is every country, we've already done that. The only problem with our country is actually we've done it for the wrong reasons. We want to protect the domestic car industry, and we make our people poorer for it. Okay, and we actually created monopolies and oligarchies and crony businesses that actually that benefit out of it, rather than opening, deregulating, and having our own borders allow competition within ourselves.
Yeah.
If you ask me, our F&B industry as a whole is actually very vibrant, and we've got talent in there.
Yeah.
And we don't need to import that talent from China, for example, or anywhere else, if you ask me. Okay, we need to actually be able to protect our 30 plus million population. And my model, actually, the thing is that the problem with Australia, for a long time, I've admired how Australia actually were able to have domestic industries until they over-regulated. And actually, they make their price of energy high because of all these renewables thing. Okay, so that is basic. You ask me, that's their biggest problem, that they shot themselves in the foot. Yeah, But for a country that is so far away from all their markets, they were doing very, very well. And they built a developed nation. Malaysia. The thing is, there are three things, and one of the problem with all the developing countries or third world countries, we are not pretty much third world anymore. But the fact is, the biggest problem that we face is corruption, because leakages from corruption takes away money from the economic system.
I think that is also going to be the. If you ask me, it's not the economic policy or anything of China. It is actually the one that is going to collapse China is actually also going to be corruption.
If you ask me,
everywhere,
I think that is
history repeats itself.
Don't you think so?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
that is the
that is the bane of one.
That is why you have runaway inflation, because you print money out of control. To feed the oligarchs, feed your friends, feed your GLCs, feed your SOEs.
It's the
same.
It's the same
thing.
The standard that is
a standard template. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
we all know it, and yet we do it.
Yeah, and I think that is why I think why South Korea was able to escape the so-called middle income trap. Why Japan is able to escape the middle income trap, and why Singapore, these three countries are exceptions to this rule, if you ask me, is exactly because they were able to overcome that corruption problem. Some better than others, right? But that is the single most biggest problem that not just people like us face, and so is China, as you well put.
The biggest problem.
Yeah, and that, I think,
biggest enemy. More than anything else, more than housing collapse, more than whatever, it is corruption.
I don't know what you think about this, but I mean, I've always felt that people always say, oh, look at China, they just shoot their corrupt people. My rebuttal to that is, yeah, they shoot the corrupt people who are not on their camp.
Yeah, that's right.
You agree with me on that,
Okay,
right?
Of course, I agree.
Yeah. So
It depends on who holds the gun, right?
exactly, so
Depends on who holds the gun.
it depends on which
corruption
side you want to purge.
Yeah, and then corruption can also be legalized.
Exactly.
Maybe then it doesn't become corruption.
Right. So I think
So we're on the same page on that.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I think that's more also part of why I see all this, right? And the thing is, because we do export to them, and I see whatever happens to them is going to impact us. They need to get their act together. We need to get our act together, But for our people, I think corruption is the biggest issue on the table for every voter. And if we don't learn from what we see in the rest of the world, and if you ask me, when you brought up the issue of IMF, they had more debt with IMF. Malaysia has zero debt from IMF. And yet we are stuck at this per capita income. I brought up the same situation. For me, if I have the double-digit growth that China has, okay, with the population that can consume, if it can consume, I should be looking at least today, GDP per capita in China, $30,000 to $40,000 per capita. Easy. Why are we not seeing that? And the same goes with Malaysia. Malaysia, without corruption, every one of you guys don't even talk about minimum wage. Minimum wage does not work, right? You let the market system works. We would be looking at minimum $30,000 per capita. We are looking at Singapore hitting $90 per capita.
Yeah. Why are we not?
Why are we not?
Well, we know that.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that probably will come. I think we've gone quite a bit.
I think we did. We
Yeah,
did cover quite a bit for today.
Yeah, I want to thank Fui again for
You're most
coming on
welcome.
board.
Yeah.
I'm always enjoying this conversation with you.
Okay.
Because it's always
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
always
yeah,
back
yeah,
and forth.
yeah.
And I hope our viewers enjoy this as well and learn out of it and take something good from it and make up your own mind. Help us grow. Subscribe, like, and share with your friends. Thank you so much.
Can I do a 2-second sales pitch?
Please do, my friend. Please.
We're coming up with a new book on geopolitics.
You're talking about
So,
the
yeah.
Center of...
Sense is coming up with a new book
Okay.
on Malaysian Chinese in the multipolar world. So we're looking at how the Malaysian Chinese community is shifting, has shifted, is shifting, and on a certain level, it's almost like it's not like some being is telling them what to do, but I see them as a group moving in a certain direction, which I think is very interesting. So that will be in my book, 9 chapters.
Oh, I tell you what, I
And you
wish
can
you had
inter-
brought
and-
it up
and-
halfway
and you-
through that just now because...
No. That's a subject for another matter.
Okay, let's do that for another matter. When is
another
the book
podcast.
coming out?
Well, I'm still on 6, 7, 8, 9 is still not ready. But,
Okay.
I mean, I'm still editing. So
Are you still editing? When do you expect to publish?
what's
your target of
It has to
publish?
be 2026. I hope to get it out before Chinese New Year, maybe.
Oh, that would be nice.
Yeah, that would be nice, but it's ambitious. But anyway, it will
Let's
be at
do-
least 2026.
let's
First
do
quarter,
one.
Yeah.
Get me the book. I
Yes.
want to read it.
Yes.
And
I suspect a lot of people probably want to read it. It's quite. It's looking at. I think it's very relevant to what happened in Sabah.
nice.
Right? How the Chinese have voted, how they have always voted, how the nature of the way Chinese people take risks actually is a reflection on how they vote actually. which is always what I find is it's a gambler's hand, but as gambling goes, you don't always win, right?
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing. I'm
So
a gambler.
So how do you move from a majority stake to be a strategic minority? I think this is a question for the Malaysian Chinese community. It's interesting. I mean, we are a very small community, but actually not small. We are about 7 million now, believe it or not.
Well, I think I have a pitch on that I want people to think. I've always said that actually our government has done a propaganda on our population. We have stopped publishing the data of race with respect to Malay population, and actually have redefined that to Bumiputra. If you were to ask me, the Malay population does not exceed maybe at best 50%, and actually the non-Malay population has a huge influence over the direction of the country, but they have been made to feel that they don't have a say in the country. And this is something that I hope that, I truly believe that the viewers of this podcast is an extremely intelligent group of people. It takes something to be able to go through the conversations that I have over twice a week at this length and at this level of intellectual capacity.
Yeah.
And I want to explore those further. So wait for the next one. You guys are going to be very interested in the next topic as well. Thank you so much, Fui.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for allowing my sales pitch.
Hey!